Hey guys, this is Ms. Latours over here at the Mount Juliet Library, and what we're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks is we're going to take, again, one of those bigger lessons that we started at the very beginning of the COVID virus situation, and we're going to take it and break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. And what we're going to deal with today is going to be the spark that actually began the American Revolution, and that's going to be the Declaration of Independence, written in 1776 by Thomas Jefferson. What the Declaration of Independence did is it made it possible for all sorts of complaints that people all throughout the colonies had, and Jefferson was able to crystallize it into a very well-written document. Jefferson, like most of the founding fathers, was a very literate person. He read all of the different philosophers, but perhaps the one that he leaned on the most in writing the Declaration of Independence was John Locke. John Locke spoke about the natural rights that people had, that among them are life, liberty, and property. Sound familiar? He's going to get this from a book entitled The Two Treatises on Government. Now, initially, those people who read the Declaration of Independence at first, they were kind of like, oh, come on, Tom, there's nothing new in that. But then Jefferson made them realize that what he was doing is he was taking different ideas that had been kicking around for centuries, and he put it all into one concise document that we call the Declaration of Independence. It couldn't be the length of a whole entire book because it had to go directly to the King of England, and it had to be published all throughout the United States. So we couldn't go volumes and volumes. It had to be a short, concise document like you see up there, folks. That was very unique the way Jefferson did it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the actual Declaration itself. I know in all my years teaching, more often than not, when I show the kids what's actually said in the Declaration of Independence, they're seeing it and hearing it for the very first time. So let's see how the Declaration of Independence opens. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds and then to assume among the powers on earth a separate and equal station, ta-ta. Okay, this is saying a whole bunch of different things, okay? Firstly, Jefferson is realizing that what we are about to do has never been done before. We've never seen a colony break away from the European power that controlled it. This was revolution. And the purpose of this document is going to be to explain why it's being done. Now, let's continue. The laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. What we're talking about, folks, is going to be a God-given right. These are the rights that are given to us not by the English government, but rather these rights are given to us by God. Now, the next part, and the decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that we should declare the causes that impel us to this separation. Jefferson realized that A, not only is this being done for the very first time in world history, B, that we're assuming these rights that are given to us by God, but C, he felt that it was necessary to explain to the rest of the world why this is actually going to be done. So let's look at the next critical part of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. What he's saying is that everything that I'm about to say is obviously true. They are indisputable. That all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Inalienable rights, natural rights. Life, liberty, and property, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can see the influence that John Locke had over here. Jefferson is saying that everybody is born with these inalienable rights, and he sincerely believed it. Sadly, it wasn't until after the American Civil War that this becomes a reality with the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to the Constitution. And you can also make a case for the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, women's suffrage. But eventually, these words that Jefferson says are going to become a reality. Next, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. What that means is governments are being created to make sure that these rights that we are given by God are going to be protected by this government. All right? What we're saying is we create governments to protect these rights. Next part. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. So what we just said is, yeah, we create governments to make sure that we are guaranteed these rights. But if ever a government reaches a point where it's not going to protect the rights of the people, then we have the obligation to alter or abolish that government. What he's talking about is a concept that we call social contract. Social contract is like an unwritten agreement between the people and their government, okay? The people on one hand are going to say to the government, okay, we're going to accept your authority, but in return, you have to promise that you're going to protect our rights for us. If you fail to protect the rights, then the fact that we accepted you is now a moot point. We have the right to get rid of that government. Social contract. People like Hobbes, people like Locke, people like Jefferson sincerely believed in social contract, and they felt that this was going to be the justification for the rebellion itself. Now he's going to go into what's been going on here in the colonies. The history of the present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations. At this point, what Jefferson is going to do is he's going to make a list of 26 or 27 grievances. These are the things that we feel King George III was doing wrong and how he was neglecting the American colonies. But what did King George III do? The establishment of an absolute tyranny existed over these American colonies. Hey, we really tried, but King George III is a tyrant. The king was not listening. And because the king was not listening, we're going to go to the next part of the Declaration. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, solemnly publish and declare. This is huge. Okay? For the very first time in a legal document, we are seeing the term the United States of America. We're no longer talking about ourselves as being British subjects. We're talking about ourselves as being members of a brand new country that we call the United States of America. That these united colonies are, and for the right ought to be, free and independent states. What this means is that we are now the United States and we are entitled to our freedom. We deserve our freedom. Next part is very complicated, but it's really very simple. That they are absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown and all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain. What does that mean? Simple. We're out of here. Okay? We tried. We told you what we were complaining about, not just in the Declaration of Independence, but for the 5 or 6 years before the Declaration of Independence itself was actually published. We tried to get your attention, but you just kept ignoring us. Sorry, we're done. And finally it concludes, and for the support of this declaration and the firm reliance upon the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. Wow, they're putting it all out on the line, okay? We want this to be done, and we are pledging our own lives. But the other thing I want you to pick up on this is interwoven all throughout the Declaration of Independence and most of the documents that were created at that particular point in American history, we constantly refer to Providence, the Creator, God. Okay? We had a firm reliance upon God to protect us. We knew that these rights were given to us not by the British government, but they were given to us by God. And when the British government or any other government, they're trying to explain this is good for the whole entire world, when a government denies the rights that are guaranteed to us by God, then we have the right to alter and abolish it. This is actually the work of God. We rely upon God's hand in everything that we do here in the United States, according to the Declaration of Independence. Bam! That's the spark. That spark is going to ignite a fire. That fire is going to be the American Revolution. Next week, we're going to take another step closer to talking about what the American Revolution itself is all about. Hope to see you guys. Take care.